Right, Diamond Matt channel, welcome. Right, I'm not making videos as often as I was, so new patrons having to wait a little bit longer for their shout outs. Apologies, do appreciate all the patrons. So yeah, I've got a few people to say thank you to over the last 2 weeks. We got Enzo, Mary S, BJ, Dicandia, Mike, Lanny and Tim. Thank you very much, guys. Patrons own this channel. If it wasn't for the financial contributions from the patrons, I simply wouldn't be able to do this. So yeah, I do really appreciate the patrons. I do enjoy making the videos. Got other stuff going on at the moment, working on an online course. I'm selling stuff online, and so yeah, it all takes time away from doing the videos, so that's why I'm a little bit not uploading as often as I used to at the moment. Yeah, this video, I'm working on the online course. I got to a stage where I'm getting specific about platinums. I thought, as I've got all the bits out and all the solders and stuff, I may as well give you a bit of a heads up for a YouTube video for working in platinum. If you haven't worked in it before, it's the melting temperatures are really high and the metal's expensive and it's different to gold and silver. So I remember being nervous when I first got my hands on platinum, but you might be pleasantly surprised that when you try and solder stuff in platinum, the metal and the solder, they seem to behave themselves really well. It's a really clean metal, it doesn't oxidize like the other alloys. It's good. It's my favourite metal. Fortunately, when I worked in London, most of the stuff we made was in platinum, so I've got a lot of experience with it and I enjoy working in it. So the best things I've ever made in my life have been in platinum, so I'm kind of fond of the metal, so I do enjoy it. So anyway, I've got a book here. This book is from the beginning of my career, so this book's coming up like 30 years old. It's like from the mid-90s. So there's specific stuff about platinum. I studied this in college, that's why I had this in mind. There's specific stuff about mines and stuff and the supply from around different countries. That'll all be out of date, so I'll just concentrate on the history of it. So just a couple of paragraphs, don't worry. The first platinum known to have reached England was sent here by a Jamaican assayer, Charles Wood, good old-fashioned Jamaican name there, in 1741, a long time ago. Scientific work on the metal was first carried out by William Watson, who described its interesting properties in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society in 1750. Yeah, they couldn't really work on it very well because of the high melting temperatures. Didn't have the equipment to do on it until the oxyhydrogen blowpipe was invented by an American, Robert Hare, in 1847. So it was around a long time before it really sort of was beginning to venture into the jewellery trade. Okay, skipping a whole chunk of this page. It says platinum recommends itself to the manufacturing jeweller for a number of reasons. Once the problem melting had been overcome, it proved to have good working properties, is almost as malleable and ductile as gold, only just after annealing it hardens up really quickly. they missed that out. You got to anneal it loads, so I'll get into that later. It's almost as malleable as gold, doesn't oxidize during working, that's what I said before. It's clean metal, it's nice. And yeah, its strength and its colour make it ideal for mounts for like diamond jewellery. Yeah, it's very resistant to acid, except for aqua regia, which is like that really, really strong acid mix. You can literally liquefy gold and stuff in it. Horrible stuff. I'm scared of acid. There's another YouTube channel called Modern Goldsmith. He mixed up, don't know what his background is, he mixed up his own really super strong acid in his own workshop. Like, I would never do that. And yeah, there's a video, I'll happily put a link to it. It's a good video. One of his customers bought him just this like horrible like just lump of dirty, horrible gold. There's loads of stuff mixed in it, and he basically melted it all down and sort of refined it and gave the customer back pure gold. Don't ever ask me to do that. I can't do that. But yeah, it was a good video. It was worth a watch. So when you want to get making jewellery in platinum, you're going to need some eye protection. These are like dark green, and these are specific for working in platinum, according to the catalogue I bought them from. They're not dark enough. They're okay for medium and quick hard solders, but especially if you're melting, or if you're doing something 1700 degree melting temperature solder, which is like the hard one, something big, like quite a big shank, you're looking at it glowing white hot for quite some time. These are not quite up to the job. I prefer them to be a bit darker. So anyway, you can't have something totally blacked out. So you need to see what you're doing when you're not soldering. But anyway, these are not quite enough if you look at that. Maybe I'm going to show you through there. A lot of that. Not quite dark enough, but they do need them. They do help. Anyway, yeah, easy solder. You don't really need them. Medium, you can do simple, quick solders without eye protection. But anything, like I say, like a big heavy ring shank or something, just put them on. Like, it is glowing very bright, it's going to hurt your eyes. And also avoid it will help you avoid making a mistake as well. Like if you're blinded by the bright light, you might not see that the solder's already flooded or something, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, when you get into like hard and 1700 degree, 1750 something, this melts at 1700. Definitely need eye protection for that. Okay, so I'll show you some flames. This is just like a small ring, yeah, it's thinnish bit of solder. By the way, before I get going, easy, I learned this the hard way, platinum easy, even though it melts at the lowest temperature of all the solders in platinum, it still melts at a temperature that damages diamonds. I learned that the hard way. I was trying to repair a shoulder or something on a ring, and there was pave set diamonds. I thought, oh, I'll get away with it, easy solder. Didn't, like 2 of the little diamonds went kind of grey, balls them up. So if you're repairing old jewellery, even if the whole thing's made in platinum, you kind of got to use 18 karat white. You won't have a problem. I actually think 18 karat white solder is a better solder, a better join than in platinum. Platinum is a little bit brittle compared to gold. Gold solder has more sort of ductility to it. Platinum's more sort of hard and brittle. So a repair on a second-hand piece of jewellery, you've got to do what you've got to do. If you're soldering right next to pave set diamonds, you can't do it. You literally can't do it in platinum. It's too risky because of the melting temperature. So just use 18 karat white and then rhodium it. Obviously, if you're making something fresh from new, you can't muck about different alloys. For assay reasons, if you want to get it hallmarked successfully, you can only work in platinum. So anyway, I'll just show you some different flames that I reckon you can use. Like easy, I reckon that'll melt easy on something quite small like that. Medium, it's just a touch bigger. Basically, you need a flame with a lot of oxygen going through it, so it's a sort of a sharp, very hot, noisy, bright flame. But 1700, you got to really pump it up. So it goes white hot really quick. You can solder things really quickly, but you've got to have a really hot flame. I think I mentioned before as well, the metal is really soft and ductile, but only just after you annealed it. Rolling it through the mills, like when I was milling this out, I just mill it, I wouldn't even crush it that hard, but you can just like bend it a little bit with your fingers before you put it through the mills, mill it very gently, and then try it again. You'll notice it hardens up so quick. So you do a milling that out, spent way more time annealing it than I did actually milling it. It's just do a little bit and then anneal it again, do a little bit, anneal it again. If you're working for me here, I'd rather see you being over cautious, keeping the metal soft, rather than just trying to work fast and get the job done quicker. Because if you start getting to the dimensions you need it to be at, and then you get cracks in the metal, you haven't got any space to sort of melt over those cracks and then mill it more. So just take your time with annealing it, keep it soft. And yeah, I would say when you're getting experience, just tweak it. When you've got say, a length of that, just tweak it with your fingers. Fresh after annealing, it's really bendy, and just fresh after milling, even gently, it's really hard. So you get a sense of how quickly it hardens up and how hard you can crush it. Yeah, talk about annealing as well. Get it almost white hot, annealing, wearing my goggles. I'd get it white hot. It glows white hot, but where it's under the hottest part of the flame, it's really white, and I just run that really white section across it, and you get a nice, neat anneal. I've said this before on my channel loads as well. Don't put your flame that way, going across. Put your flame, not annealing it that way. Say there's a length of wire going across there. I'm putting my whole flame along it, and then I'm getting the most efficiency out of the heat of the flame, and then you just do it quicker, you do it neater, be more consistent anneal on it as well. I can't speak today. Less likely to miss a bit. Yeah, let it cool down slowly as well. If you quench it, I reckon it hardens up again. It will be annealed after you anneal it and then quench it in water or straight in your acid or whatever. It will be annealed, but I think you get more benefit from your work annealing if you just let it cool down. And it does, luckily, platinum does cool down quite quick. So something like that, I would just pick it up in tweezers. I just put it on my metal block, and then I put my back of my tweezers on top of it. That would cool down really quickly, something like that. I keep seeing online, and a patron asked me about it as well recently. People say don't need solder to join platinum. I've never tried it. I've got a problem with it, because I think basically you're sort of melting, say you've got 2 bits of platinum, like you're melting the surfaces together. So for those 2 inner surfaces to melt and join and like bond, like fuse together, that means you've kind of melted all around the outside as well, which means you've got loads of buffing and stuff. And making jewellery like I do, I'm trying to get specific dimensions, and if I've milled it out just so, and then I try and join it, and I've sort of made the surface go all like bobbly, reticulated, whatever it's called, I've then got to file it loads and then buff it back loads, and I'm going to ruin my dimensions. And you can't just do it around the join, then you've got a thin spot. On a ring like that, if I tried to smelt the ends together, and then I've got to thin the whole thing to get it all parallel again, I just think it's going to be trouble. So considering 1700 is just going to do the job perfectly, why would I bother taking the risk of mucking up all the surfaces around my join? And then, if you're new to platinum, you will be in for a shock. If you're really trying to get it like finished, like beautiful polish on there, like proper mirror finish, you've got to do a ton of work on it. Like, you've got to file it. So I'll just give you a general bit of my experience. You start buffing, get it filed nicely with a fine-tooth file, then go to your coarse ones, like 240. Do quite a bit, make sure you got all the file marks out, and then you're going down to like 400s, 400 grit paper, then doing a lot more buffing, and then I keep like my 10 times loop. I literally look at it closely, making sure I've buffed it out, buff it different directions as well. Don't just keep going over it on the same, because all your lines go the same direction. You want to sort of buff that way and then buff it that way if possible. Paper disc is good because you're not doing like lines. They're sort of spinning disc obviously, so you're moving that around. It's quite good for getting the surface nice and ready, but a paper disc is not a good tool for going across the side of a ring, so it's a buff stick job. So yeah, 400s, go to 600s. You spend, every time you go down a grade, you've got to spend more time on it, and then keep going down to like sort of 1200, 1500, even finish off with like 2000. I think I've got 2000 sticks somewhere. Is that a 2000? That's a 2000. The buff sticks, they literally go shiny where gold impregnates in them, and it's like squeaking, like, so it's almost like, well, you kind of are, putting metal against metal. And then before you even think of going to the polishing motor, what you've buffed should already look polished before you start polishing it. It's a more pleasurable experience making jewellery, spending more time at the bench buffing than spending loads of time on the polishing motor trying to get rid of little marks and stuff that could have been buffed out easily. Trying to polish out those same marks is a dirty, horrible, noisy job, more uncomfortable, and it's more stressful as well. My experience is to do more work at the bench with the buff sticks than try and do the work on the polishing motor. So I've got to mention the joins as well, something like that. If that was actually a ring, I know it's small, but if that was actually a ring I was making, I'd cut through it and I'd make sure that join is really good, not like a bit of a gap, even a tiny gap, and then fill it up with solder. Can't get away with working with that in platinum because the nature of the solder is it seems to polish out really quickly. It's not wear resistant like the metal. So when you're on the polishing mops, any join like that, there's going to be a little dip, you're going to see it, it's a little line. So your join's going to be really tight, really flat and nice. And then I would also recommend using 1700 solder wherever possible, because that seems to be the most resistant to being polished out. So you're helping yourself out a lot really by having a tight join and using 1700. So just to summarize this video, in hindsight, I may have made it sound really difficult to work with. You've got really high melting temperatures, it hardens up really quickly when you're milling it out. You've got to buff it loads before you can polish it nicely, and even when you do polish it nicely, there's a risk of all the solder polishing out of your joins unless you've got the joins really tight. But if you can get the skill, if you're good enough to work around all that, and you are rewarded with a metal that polishes up really bright and really nice. It's a really white, pleasant metal. Like it was saying in that book, the element in there is rhodium, and rhodium we use for plating for 18 karat white gold. All 18 karat white gold, even though basically is plated to make it look like platinum. It's rhodium plated. It's yeah, it's a really bright, white, nice metal. So it's good for that. And also just the sort of properties of it. It's nice and ductile, we can work with it when it's annealed, and then it's really hard wearing. That's why it's so difficult to polish. There's a repair we did, like so my apprenticeship was all doing repairs. Say, this is a ring from a previous video. Say someone's wearing a gold ring, got stones on the top, and the back of the shank goes to the back of the finger. People wear their jewellery every day, and so say you're like picking up bags and just general daily wear, the back of the shank wears out. In gold, it's a really common repair where that's got to be cut off and replaced with a fresh one. I've done loads of them in my career. In gold, in platinum, probably one or two. I mean, I sort of think I can remember doing one. I mean, it's so rare. Platinum's so hard wearing. Even a ring shank like that would take an easy 50 years of daily wear. Like it would just goes on forever. It's so hard wearing, so it's really good. So yeah, it suits jewellery perfectly. Also because it's so white, something like that, because it's not set yet, If that was all platinum, polish all that out, it'll be really bright white. So that makes, especially diamonds, but even colour stones, it helps them look their best. It's sort of reflecting light from deep at the bottom of the stone back up, because it's literally the metal is reflective. It's not just relying on the light to get in the side. So good metal for making jewellery.